Thanks, Vai. Thanks for a great introduction. It's pleasure to be part of the community where you are also sharing your knowledge. I know you solve quite a few difficult challenges, and it's always a learning experience to be part of a community where everybody is contributing, it's a great learning. I hope every one of you who is also watching will go to Power BI community and either ask questions or we try to solve those questions. And this is one of the way you can increase your knowledge. So as I mentioned, today we are going to cover data factory pipelines in Microsoft Fabric, and I'm going to share my screen. And we will see most of the things in action. I rarely talk about theory, so we will have a lot of actions on the screen. Okay, hope you are able to see my screen.
Yeah,
let me.
We can see that.
Yes, okay. I'll move the meeting on the other tab. Okay, fine. So today we are going to discuss data factory pipelines in Microsoft Fabric. So data factory in Microsoft Fabric is one of the way you can bring data inside the Microsoft Fabric. So there are primarily few ways you can bring in data. So data factory, we primarily talk about data pipelines and we talk about Dataflows Gen2. So these are the two primary sources using which you can bring in the data. Other than that, because we have Spark notebooks and we can use Python there or R or Scala, those are also the source. They can also access your sources, whatever online available easily, and you can bring in data using Spark notebooks also. So today what we are going to cover here is I will just give you a very brief overview of Dataflow Gen2, though we are talking about pipelines, but I'll just give you a brief overview of Dataflow Gen2. Then we'll come to data pipeline and we will see ingestion of data using data pipelines. Now, data pipelines are not limited to data ingestion. Data pipelines can also use for orchestration, means you would be able to create a data pipeline, which will call a Dataflow Gen2, which will call a notebook, which will call a procedure, which can call a script, and you will be able to create many complex pipelines using that. Now, data integration is a long process. It's just not that I just bring a Dataflow Gen2 and I'm done. I might bring a Dataflow Gen2, the data goes into LakeHouse. From LakeHouse, I may want to use warehouse and write down a procedure to take the data from a lakehouse to warehouse, which was actually written in a warehouse in a SQL. And then finally, we end up doing multiple activities. We may have more than one fact, and we would like to combine those data. All those could be done using data pipelines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to directly jump onto the Microsoft Fabric. Hope my screen is visible. app.powerbi.com. One second. I think I shared my screen, but my mouse. Okay. Fine. So app.powerbi.com is the one place where you were used to get Power BI. Now it's in the same place where you are also going to get Microsoft Fabric. I'm assuming that all of you have already enabled Microsoft Fabric trial. And if not, then please go to your user login. You will have an option to start the Microsoft Fabric trial. Some of you, when you start it for first time, it may show you a false error that your capacity is exceeded, even though you might not have consumed all these 7 free trials which you had. In such cases, create a PPU trial, which it will allow you to do, and post that, try to create a lakehouse. And after that, you should be able to have the Microsoft Fabric trial. It may sometime take a day or 2 time in such cases, but usually you will be able to get a Fabric trial. So what I'm going to do today is, for today's presentation, I'm going to create a new workspace. And to create a new workspace, on the left-hand side, we have option for workspaces. And then we have a button on the bottom. Is my screen visible? This correct screen?
Yeah, I can see the workspace and the new workspace. You just highlighted that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so and you click on the new workspace. This new workspace I'm creating for today's demo. So we will call this partial Power BI group. And let me call it as a demo group, demo workspace. And then I don't have a domain created, but if you have a domain created, you can assign to that. you have to go to the advanced and you have to use trial. Those of you who are on the trial capacity can use trial capacity, but some of you might have already purchased fabric capacity. You can use fabric capacity for that. So you have option below for that. Those of you who have just enabled and not seeing still, you can use premium per user and start doing that. Go down, you can use large semantic model format. Rest of the things you can keep default and click on apply. It should create a workspace, empty workspace like that. In those who are coming from the Power BI world, you know that the workspace is a container of report, dashboard, scorecard, paginated report, etc. And we can apply security here. And now with the Microsoft Fabric, it becomes container of your lake houses, warehouses, and many other components which we have. So let's quickly look at the new components that we have. I'm not going to go into details of each one of them. We will primarily focus on Data Factory. So click on new. Most of the options which you see here for the first time are coming from the Power BI world. But if you click on the more option, you should be able to see new Fabric components. And one of the Fabric components which we are interested in for today is Data Factory, and which include two things: Dataflow Gen2 and data pipelines. I will start today's journey by creating a Dataflow Gen2. Let me click on Dataflow Gen2. I click twice, so it seems like it taken a second data flow. So once you click, it should open a data flow. It doesn't ask for a name, especially in case of data flow. So you can click on the name of the Dataflow Gen2 on the right top. I'll just highlight the screen where the name was. So here on the name, if you click, you should be able to rename it. You can give a useful name by which you can identify it and press enter, and it should be able to save that. Sometime please give it a little bit of time. It may error out and it may revert the name. So just give it a couple of minutes. For today's demo perspective, I'm going to use a data which is available on the GitHub, and I'll also provide the link for this. So I'll just provide the link in the chat window in case some of you want to use the same data. Now here what I've done is, if you go down on this GitHub Amit Chandak PBI Power BI, I have specifically created a file for Fabric, which is sales data for Fabric. This is the file I'm planning to use today. What I've done, because Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse initially was not having on the last screen option for not having removing the spaces. We have to manually remove the spaces. So I've created this file where the column name doesn't have the spaces. But now on the last screen, we do have an option where we can ask Microsoft Fabric Dataflow Gen2 itself to do the job for us. Once you click on that, you can't use the direct URL from here. It contains blob here. We can't use blob. We need the raw. So right click on the raw, copy link, and this is what we are going to use for today. I'm back on the tab again, and here in the get data, you have to go to more option and search for web. You have to use the option web API and paste it. Because I've already connected, it is going to take that older URL. But even if you do edit connection, you don't have much information to give in this case because it's a public data. So anonymous authentication would do the job for you. But in case you are using any other database or link which need authentication, you need to provide authentication details. Sometime you might need to use organizational authentication in case it is a single sign-on with Microsoft. You can, and the option lying here only. In case you want to use service principal, you can use service principal also. Press on next on the bottom right. And because this is an Excel file, it's going to identify that and it's going to show us what all tables we have. So I'm going to click on those tables. Make sure that you always have this button checked, because if you simply click on a table, it will do show you the data, but it is not selected for loading into the Dataflow Gen2. So once you have selected whatever table you require, you can click on create again on the right bottom. So data is loaded into Dataflow Gen2. And now here, Dataflow Gen2 is a little bit different in terms of data pipeline. Now, data pipeline, while the primary job is to bring in data pretty fast and orchestrate. While Dataflow Gen2, you can bring in the data and you can do the transformation. Those of you who are from the Power BI world, you know this is just the same Power Query UI, and you can do n number of transformation here. You can do complete transformation of the data to put it into the final shape. That include, I'll just go through few options only that include cleanup of the data by removing the rows, top, bottom, blank, error, duplicate, by keeping the rows, by combining the data using merge queries means joining, append means just union of the data. And then you have a lot of other transformation options that include transpose data, that include pivot data, unpivot data, and split columns, extract data. All these options are available for you to explore. Quite a few I have already explained in one of my series is on my channel, beginner tutorial series. I've explained most of them how to use those. Now I'll just do a one quick transformation here, and that's not a transformation. I'm just going to add one additional column here. So on the sales table, I would like to add an additional column here. So I'll go to add column on the top, and there we have option for custom column. It means we can create custom formulas. These formulas could be really complex, but here I just wanted to have a very simple formula. That is, I have the quantity and I do have the price. So I want to calculate the gross sales. And I'm just calculating a formula for that. I'll click on OK. And it will add that formula. Now remember, there is a space here. And when I go to the last step, because on the LakeHouse, we are not able to save the column name with the space, I'm expecting this may give me an error. Now I don't have a LakeHouse created right now. I have directly created Dataflow Gen2. So where should I land it? I don't have place to land it. So let me do one thing. I'll go to another tab. Persian Power BI Go. OK, so in this workspace right now, I'm working on a Dataflow Gen2, and Dataflow Gen2 as well as data pipelines are going to need a destination where I'm going to save my data. And to do that, I'm going to create a destination. And this is also for some of you the first step in case you directly did not get the Microsoft Fabric, but you got a PPU trial instead of Fabric trial, but your capacity still have the Fabric trial available to this step. So from the new more options, click on LakeHouse and go ahead and create a lake. I have a habit of giving a lake name Lake01, but you can choose any name which you would like to have. It's going to create a lake and it's going to land me on the LakeHouse Explorer. Whenever you want to create a lake, it's going to create a lake for you. Means it's basically when you save the data in the Fabric through this lake, it's going to save on the same storage, which we call as OneDrive. But this is one of the container there. It's just like you can assume this is one set of container which you're creating to store your data. So it can have tables, it can have files. As usual, LakeHouse can store any kind of data. So in the files, you can store any format, but definitely table is something which is Delta Parquet format. So if it is in Delta Parquet format, we call it as in table. In case you are using Spark, Python or something, do take care that when you're saving in the Delta format, you are saving it in the table folder, not in the file folder. Now I've created a lake. Let's go back to our workspace. And now there is a shortcut available once you use it. And here you can see the additional endpoints, what is semantic model, which directly help you to access the data into the Power BI, and SQL endpoint means you can run the SQL here, but it's only a read SQL, no read write. But yes, you can do read write SQL using Spark. And yesterday only I loaded a video around that. So if you want to, if you are like one of the people like me who learns SQL or SQL a lot and just want to play around with that, go to Notebook and set it to Spark SQL, and you will be able to run the queries just like you are running in your SQL Server Management Studio for warehouses, or even for lakehouses. You can run that for read only, but using Spark notebooks, you can do it in the right mode also. I'm going to create a warehouse also. So I'll again go to new and let me know if I'm going too fast. More. and I'm going to create a warehouse. And you can keep your questions ready while warehouse is getting created. I'm going to call it WH01. We'll take one question before we go back and save our Dataflow Gen2 data into the Lakehouse as well as warehouse together. So that's the beauty with the Dataflow Gen2, that in a single shot, we are going to save the data at two places, not one places, one in Lakehouse and one in warehouse. And hopefully it works while demo. So anyone having a question can type it in the chat window, or they can unmute and ask. Okay, we'll continue back. We'll back on the Dataflow Gen2, and we'll say, okay, stay on page. Okay, your session is expired. Okay. Hopefully, let me refresh. Yes, I want to leave the page. And if you refresh, it may or may not land you back on the same place, but luckily today it has landed back on the same place. Okay, so I have the four tables.
Hello, Amit.
Yes.
Is it always mandatory to create a warehouse inside the data lake?
No, so we have created a warehouse separately and a lake house separately. If you are pretty comfortable doing everything on a lake house, then there is no need of warehouse. So how would we the flow going? So let's understand there are four steps in the data analytics: primarily data collection or ingestion, data transformation, data analysis, and presentation. How we are going to do these four steps? Now, only Lakehouse collection I can do using data pipelines and Dataflow Gen2. How do I do my transformation? And even Spark notebooks. So please. So for the transformation, SQL is not going to work for you, but Dataflow Gen2 can do the transformation. You can read back data into the Dataflow Gen2 and do the transformation. You can do it using Spark SQL, Spark Python and everything, and write it back again to the Lakehouse. For analysis, you can use your notebooks or the read-only SQL or Power BI or paginated report, and presentation. Again, you can use Power BI, paginated report, Power BI reports, dashboards, scorecard, etc. So you can completely be on Lakehouse if you're able to use these technologies.
Great.
James, does that answer your question?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Okay. Fine. So just for the showcase purpose, I've created both the destination. I'm going to use both of them. And it is not necessary that I save all the tables at this moment. So what I'm going to do is let's try to save only two tables and one at each destination. So there is add destination button at two places, one on the top here and one on the bottom here. Doesn't make a difference whichever place you go. And it's not, you can save it in Microsoft Fabric. Please know there is a real good integration happening with Azure, and most of the time you will see that you will be able to, save the things on Azure and read the things back from Azure. Yeah, definitely you would, because it's a different system, so you would be requiring logins or the keys to do that. But as you can see, it's a support Azure SQL database and Azure Data Explorer Custo is supported here. Now I'm going to save it, the first table in the Lakehouse. And once you use Lakehouse, that's it's not asking for a separate login credential. It's just using the current organization login for you. And we will go to our newly created Lake 01. I'm going to keep the name same, but you can keep a different name. That's not necessary that the name in the Dataflow Gen2 and the name of the table should be same. Once you come here on this screen, you have to take a decision whether append or replace, because I'm using this dimension and this is kind of static data. So I'm preferring a replace, but append need to be decided when you are sure that the source will always have new data. When the source always have new data, you can use append method. Otherwise, there are mechanism to run incremental, and one of the session will happen in the Power BI Summit, how to run these three different kind of append, and that will happen tomorrow evening and again in the Australian time, day after tomorrow morning. So everything is checked and green, so we are pretty good to go and save these settings. And once we save these settings, this data will be loaded to Lakehouse whenever we publish this Dataflow Gen2. The second table which I would like to save is the sales table. And this I'm going to save it on the warehouse. Now there is no limitation here that I should save it to warehouse or lakehouse. You can do it all completely on lakehouse. And typically this is what we are doing is whenever we are ingesting the data, we are ingesting it into the one source, but just for the demo purpose, I'm ingesting it in two different sources, two different destinations, sorry. And I'm going to choose a warehouse destination. And you can see warehouse 01 and warehouse supports space name in these spaces. So when I go to the next step where it's actually going to check, see it's not giving in any error, but gross amount, there is one error it is giving of the data type. And this is the new thing which just came. You can actually go ahead and correct it from here only. So whenever you create a new custom column, there's an option there to choose a data type, which I missed out. So you can correct that here. And in case of Lakehouse, it will give an error message here. If you don't have the spaces in the name, which you can use fix it button and fix those. So it's all set. All the columns are correct. I'll do the save setting. So two tables have been selected. Two tables we have destination and for two we don't have. And with this setting only, I would like to publish. Now in the publish, there are two options, publish now and publish later. I would prefer to do it now. And I'm going to click on that. Even if you click on the button directly without clicking on this small down arrow, it's going to do publish now. So I'll click on publish now. And if every setup is correct, it should work. Sometime if you use any data type and you did not care about that on the last screen, it may actually go ahead and give you error while loading the data. There might be error coming in because of the source not able to give the complete data on time. And especially it can happen with on-premise sources. Please remember Dataflow Gen2 is right now only one which is supporting the on-premise databases. Pipelines are not yet supporting, Spark is not yet supporting. So Dataflow Gen2 has published, it's not showing on the screen right now. So I need to refresh my screen. Again, I think I lost the connection. Hold on. For this, I have not expected it will happen like this today. Okay, so when we come here, it is not showing a refresh. Let's refresh again. Okay, so let me open and check it out. Okay, so it got refreshed. It was faster than I thought. So what happens is first time it is going to show you a sign here, which is publish sign, and the second sign will be shown here, the refresh sign, which we are unable to observe because of the internet issue, but seems like the data is loaded. Now we have to go to the respective lake and warehouses to check whether the data has been loaded correctly or not. So I think I already have a warehouse open. Let me open a lake house. Okay. So what I've done, right click, open a new tab, and I am there on the lake 01, and you can see the table immediately here. Now it's loading a preview, but you have an option to go ahead and check it on the SQL endpoint also. So you can, on the right top, you have an option for LakeHouse SQL endpoint. And those of you who also like to work on SQL, just like me, can go ahead and do the work here. Now, if the table would have been combinedly coming here, we could have, write down those relational queries, inner join, left join, and can have done analysis. Now, one of the biggest advantage what we have with the Fabric, the data is here. Okay. Now, I want to analyze it. Now we do have some facilities like you have visual queries and this and that, but understand that, in this world, the most commonly used tool is a reporting tool. And if you are a quality assurance engineer or if you have a team where, you have a QA team and you have business users, they don't want to run those SQL queries. We are as a developer want to run that. How they will test? Typically, I used to call this as a black box. When your data start traveling from source to target, it creates a black box. Nobody else is aware other than us developer what is happening, but that's no more the case. The data has landed from the source and I'm creating a new report, and this is a new message which has started showing right now. To create the table report first add, I've just created, I think. Okay, so it's created this and I can simply bring in this data. Now, when I have multiple table, which we'll have in just few minutes of time, we will create the relationship and we are going to use the data which is related with each other. Okay, so now we have got the data and immediately it is ready for analysis. And this is even without creating a relationship as of now. So I'm ready. I can save this report, or if I don't want, I'm going to discard. As of now, I'm going to discard this report. So on the right hand side, I'm just going to close this without saving and be back on my lake. Cancel. Close, don't save. I'm back on my lake. Now, same way, I have a warehouse open where we have moved the second table. And let me refresh my warehouse. And I should be able to see the sales table which we have loaded here. And as you can see that. Now, warehouse is directly going to land you on the SQL endpoint. There is no separate Explorer. The Explorer itself is the SQL endpoint. And here again, you have a query view. You can click on the query view and start querying the data. You can drag it whenever you want. And you can type your query. And let me restrict it. Whatever you do it in SQL Server with certain limitations, most of the things works. And limitations are mostly at the time of, data definition. Most of the time data manipulation, all the things are supported. So we can do some data manipulation here. Again, we can create a report here. So this was a very brief introduction of Dataflow Gen2 and how you can utilize that to move your data. I have taken both the example together just for the demo purpose so that we can use both the destinations. And here I would like, if we have some questions, we'll take up those. Otherwise, we will go to data pipeline and try to insert more data.
Thank you so much, Amit. I can see Vahid raised his hand. If you want to, is that for the question, Vahid? Do you want to ask your question now or not? And Praveen as well. So each of you just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Amit. Hi, Vahid. Praveen here.
Yeah, Praveen.
Amit, I have a question regarding the licensing of this, right? The Fabric and the Azure SQL. Azure SQL we know, so I would like to understand how do we license it? Now we are using the free ones. Will it be part of the Power BI licensing itself, or we need to license it again, the Fabric separately?
Okay, so there are two parts to the Fabric licensing, and let me jump on the other window, some empty space I need. Okay, so whenever you go for Microsoft Fabric, there are two parts. One is, so there are few parts, but let me divide it into two parts for the Power BI world. So one is the Fabric capacity, and second one is your the Fabric capacity, and another one is your Power BI Pro licenses. Now, to do anything on Power BI, if you are a non-premium customer, even in the Power BI world, you need Pro licenses. So Pro licenses will enable you to view a report as well as design a report. But in Power BI world, if you are a P1 capacity or not, and that's the minimum capacity you have, you don't require viewer licenses. Now, in the Fabric world, everything, first of all, need a capacity. At the moment you are in a capacity, you are pretty much like premium or PPU more often. So even from buying a F2 capacity to any capacity onward till F2 256, you have to have a capacity. So first thing which you require in Microsoft Fabric is a capacity. Second is you need a 1 lake storage. So you need to buy 1 lake storage. And both of them are available. Information is available on licensing page, which you can use. Third is that data transfer charges as applicable. And sometime when you use KQL and Reflex, there is a different kind of storage which you need, which is also available in the page for 1 lake. So you need a capacity and you need a storage for a Fabric to begin. Now, once you begin your Fabric journey, analysis is going to happen on Power BI. So for that, you need Power BI licenses. Any capacity which is below F64, F64 is one of the capacity. Below that, you need license for every user, whether it is a designer or creator or a consumer or a viewer of the report. every Power BI user would need a license. After F64, which we also called equivalent of P1, you do not require licenses for viewers. All the viewers, you can give them access just like the Power BI World Premium capacity using a Microsoft Power BI app or Microsoft Fabric app. So all the viewers are free, but still you need license for creators or designers. So always there would be a license for Power BI users, at least 1 or 2 or maybe 10, and there would be a capacity. But capacity, unlike Power BI, which start with P1, which is $5,000 per one, it start with F2, which is I think as low as $250 per month per capacity. Wayne, is that answer your question?
Yes, Amit. Thank you so much. I got that.
Perfect. Is there any other question or? Okay, it seems there is no question. Amit, if you want to continue to go to the pipeline, let's
Okay,
go on.
so now let's go to the data pipeline, and we have the lake open. So one of the way I can go to the data pipeline is directly using the option from the lake to use the get data. And I can use a new data pipeline. Now, the advantage of using everything here is, first of all, if you go through a notebook, it will get the automatic lake. And in most of the cases, when you use data pipeline and Dataflow Gen2, the destination would also be set. And that's the reason we might prefer using data pipelines here. So I'll create the pipeline one, demo pipe one, create. And here I'm going to use first activity which I'm planning to use is the copy activity. Now there are many activities which are available in a pipeline, but because I have used the default option, it directly landing me into the copy activity. And in this copy activity, I'm going to use HTTP for my URL. Again, I'm going to copy the draw URL and I'm check out whether I need a CSV file or it's going to directly work on the. So HTTP I'm going to use, and in that one, it's a new connection. I'll give the URL and it's already identified that. I'll press the next. I'll leave all this information as is as of now. And now when I go here, it should be able to allow me to edit the information. It's not delimited text. It is an Excel file. And in the Excel file, which sheet I want to collect. So I need to give a name. So I want the sales sheet. Let me see if I give simply sales, does it pick it up or not? It should be able to bring the names actually. Let's give a name sales here. And let's try use first row as header and try to preview the data. If it doesn't work out, I do have the CSV version with me, or I'll check it out the name. Just give me a second. I'll check out the name for this sheet. Okay, I think I've done a good job remembering that. Okay, so the preview is coming. It means the data is all set to load it. So remember this thing, first row as header. First row as header. Oh. First row it has a correct data type, name. You can use index. I usually use the index instead of name, and then you preview the data before you move to the next step. Then I'll go to the next step. See, destination is already been selected. If I would not have used that option, this I would have manually have to do that. So Lake 01 destination is already selected for me because of that. And this pop-up is really good because a few times I lost this while recording because I highlight these things. And then you have to press next. Now, destination, you want table, file, load to existing table, load to new table, append or overwrite. So I'm going to save it to a table. I'm here in the Fabric world and everything is Delta Parquet is treated as a table. So I would like definitely to be a table so that I can use it. And then I would like to give it as a name sales. Now, sometime what you would notice here is, even though if you give a name here, at few instances, I've noticed that it doesn't take that name. By the time we click on OK and go to the copy, it still take that HTTP name. So that is why I'm not going to use an option run now. I'm going to use this option. Next screen, I'll explain that option. So I give the name and we might have to correct the data types. It may or may not detect the correct data types. So I would like to correct the data types here. So this is going to be date. The sales date and delivery date is going to be date. And you can see there are no spaces in the names, and that's how I created it. But if you have the spaces in the name, again, you have to create because destination is LakeHouse and it will not take spaces. Though these IDs are integer, for the time being, I'm leaving them as is, and I'm going to use double for other things like price, cost, or I'm going to use double. Actually, you can type to make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to keep rest of the things as is, but remember I have to connect with item ID. So let me make it integer. If the data type is not same as usual, like Power BI in the relationship, it may give the issue. So that is why I've decided to change my join columns to integers. And I have a date, integers, and double, and I'll press next. Now, this is a very good step. You can immediately start the data transfer, but sometime, as I told you, it might not pick up the name. So I'll just uncheck this option and click on OK, and I'll explain you this step, and I'll tell you a few other things which you can do with data pipeline. So you have this copy data step, and this is how typically in Azure, those of you who would have worked, you might have seen this screen many times. So you have the journal, you have the source, all the source details are here. If you want to change something, when you come back and you want to change, let's say right now we are saying it is append, or that would be destination. Anything we want to change here in the source, we can change. Then in the destination, again, your advanced properties like append and overwrite. I'm right now using overwrite. You can later might want to come back and change it to append if you like, you can do that. And you have a few options where you would be able to give a little bit advanced detail like expression and everything that is also available here. And now this is the place where you can see the correct name. But in the past, I faced a few times, and that's why I always come here and check. Mapping all should be correct. If you missed out something, again, you have option to come and check it here. And these are the few settings. Like if you want to enable the logging, again, you will require the destination for logging, enable staging, you will require for destination for that. Right now, I don't want none of those. I don't want anything of that sort, so I'm going to leave it. Other than that, I can add additional activities. Like I can call a data flow. So I can say, OK, the last data flow which I created should also execute. Now it should execute in parallel or sequential. I can decide. So if it is a parallel, the next activity, both these activity can have output on the next section, which could be a, let's say, SQL procedure which I'm creating. So what I can say, let both of them bring data together. Let me make it a little bit short. And their success should execute this. So when both of them are giving us a success, then it should call a store procedure, which is going to load the data into my facts and dimension, or it's doing some activity. Or maybe I would like to call a notebook post that to further enhance my data. So in this manner, you can keep on adding activities. You have quite a few activities. Copy data, the one we are using, we are going to use right now to copy the data. Dataflow Gen2, we have used it. And you can do the setup. Once you bring in Dataflow Gen2, you can go ahead and here in the setting, you can go ahead and call your Dataflow Gen2, whichever you want. Now, there is a question few of time you have asked, how do we communicate between Dataflow Gen2 and the warehouses and lakehouses? What I typically do is I create a high watermark table, or I use the table which is created in a lakehouse or a warehouse, and again it added back to the Dataflow Gen2 and use the same table. This concept you can watch on some of the incremental load videos, which is going to which are available on the table or also in the conference which we are having, Power BI conference which we have today. You will be able to see that. So in that manner, you can communicate. But yes, pipelines have their own way to communicate, and you can actually add a step which is basically lookup. And in the lookup, you can actually go ahead and write down or select certain data. Okay, and use those things on the further steps. So using the lookup, you can generate a query or a data. I think you have option to write down SQL also here. So you can use lookup, and here you have some options. Let me choose warehouse. Let's see, does it give a query option? Yeah, you can write down queries. So you can write down a query and that will give you a lookup, and from lookup there are these add dynamic content through which you can create the variables, and those variables can be used in for the next step to control it. So we use lookups, we can use scripts, we can use store procedure. Now store procedures can get data from lookup as to be passed, because store procedure you can pass the data. You can use that. Set variable is again used. Sometimes if we create the variable from the lookup and we want to set it for further use, we can use set variables. Then if you want to run if conditions, you can do that using if condition. You can run for each. Then you have the web connector, invoke pipeline, another pipeline you wanted to call, and you want to send notification. Then how would you do that? Use this Office plugin to do that. You want to send a message to Teams. The pipeline is completed or failed. Use this one. Then now you have even Azure Databricks connector. You can call Azure Databricks from here. And then there are a few more. Like KQL connector is there, Azure Machine Learning is there, Azure Batch is there, Function is there, Webhook is there. And very recently I used Webhook for calling one of the Azure pipeline into my Microsoft Fabric pipeline, because we were getting SAP data in Azure and I used that pipeline to complete the complete flow in Fabric. So in this manner, you have these many options to create the complete pipeline. So pipeline, load data or orchestrate data, both you can do, and you can create as complex flow as you want here. And you can run things in parallel or sequential. You just have to decide that, like these two are going to run in parallel and this is sequential. This is again sequential. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all these steps which I just showcased you. Hopefully I don't delete the one I need. This will act anyway run the Dataflow. I've done the correct setup. So I'm done with all this setup of copy data right now and explain you what all other components are there. And let me save this. And once I save this, I can go ahead and validate it. So once I validate, if there are certain issues, it will let me know and I can run it. So once you run it, it will start showing the information below. Sometime if you click on this copy data and it is not showing, just click on the empty space, it will start showing you. While it is loading the data, time for you to ask a few questions.
Thank you so much, Amit. If you have any questions, feel free to raise it now.
Praveen has one question.
Yeah, Amit, Praveen here. So this data flow we have, right? Like Azure Dataflow. So is it available? Like if you go to the Azure portal to your resource group, is it available there as well, or it is specifically within the Power BI?
The Dataflow Gen2 or the one which was available here in the additional one?
Yeah, this one, the ADF Dataflow. Yeah.
So this data flow is Microsoft Fabric data flow. So if I add it, this is the Microsoft Fabric data flow which is there, and you don't have an option to choose other than the workspace. But yes, I do have seen one option. If you go to the activities, we do have like Azure Databricks and Azure Machine Learning. I think we do have calls Azure Pipeline or Azure Workspace right now using Webhook. But yes, both the places the connectors are getting built. So maybe I've not checked it out. Right now, can we call the Fabric data flow or Fabric pipeline in the Azure? I have not checked out, but there are fair chances that some of these things are getting added up. Because I know.
No. Yeah. So my question is, sorry to interrupt. My question was like generally, if you do Azure Data Factory, if you're working on Azure Data Factory, what we do, we go to the Azure portal. There we create the resource group. Then inside the ADF, we'll create the data flow. So here we are doing the same thing here. What I am asking is, So will this flow is available in the Azure Data Factory as well in the Azure portal, or it is specifically here within this Power BI Fabric portal?
It is right now very specifically inside the Power BI Fabric.
Okay, okay.
But
Okay,
as I
so
said, the connectivity is getting built across this one. And remember, Dataflow Gen2 can save the data in Azure. So that's the flexibility available. You may have connector or, in your pipelines, you may get an option call Microsoft Fabric Dataflow Gen2. That kind of facility may come because right now, if you go to your Azure data pipelines or even for data flows, I think you do get a destination as a lakehouse. So you can save the data directly from Azure to data flows or data pipelines to Microsoft Fabric lakehouses. That option is already available now.
yeah, so why I'm asking is in Azure, we have many services, right? For example, one we generally use in ADF is the data, the key vault. So here there is no
Yes.
connector for key vault. So if at all you want to secure our connection, so is it something like how do we connect to other sources? Like, is it still, I know it is still new here, the Fabric it is growing, but is it something, anything available to do that, or it still needs to be developed by Microsoft?
I think it's still in the, as far as I remember, and White can add to that. As far as I remember, this is still in the not yet available, and it is might be in the plan. So we have to share the release plan with you because I think Microsoft Fabric release plan is already available, and you might have some information available there on that.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Amit.
Okay, any other question?
Hello, yes.
Yeah.
I have a question. So in terms of cost, with Azure, it's pay as you go. But with this, how's the charges like? Is it embedded in your license? And that is all what?
So lakehouses, warehouses, and all the Spark and everything is one, the compute which you are going to use is going to utilize that. And there are, I think, if you go to the licensing, you will see how much compute is available when we talk about F64, how much compute power is available is going to take it from that. Then storage is definitely as you have a separate storage, which you're going to consume. And you do have the data transfer charges applicable, and that has been given in the Fabric licensing page.
I just shared the link for that licensing page in the chat. So you can open that one and change the currency region, and then you can find out the pay-as-you-go price and the reservation price.
Thank you.
No worries, mate. Okay, I think there is no other question. Thank you so much, Amit. It was a really great presentation. I learned a lot about that one.